stop me if you've heard this before. The Montreal Canadiens rush their prospects. Sometimes when the Habs have a draft pick and they use it to select a guy, they bring that guy to the NHL too quickly, either right after the draft or a year after the draft. And frequently, we'll see Canadiens guys who had potential and who had star power end up faltering very, very quickly. This is an idea that you could apply to one of the most recent videos we have on the channel, the Jesperi Kotkaniemi buyout video. You could say that the Montreal Canadiens rushing, quote-unquote, KK into the NHL kind of damned him into the next few years of his NHL career. You could say there were a few other guys that the Habs drafted over the seasons that might have gotten the same rushing treatment. Was Juraj Slafkovsky rushed? You could debate so, but the ironic part is, the one time the Montreal Canadiens don't go out there and rush a guy, they don't bring him to the NHL or even the AHL as soon as they can, it seems to bite them in the behind. Because today we are talking about the 5th overall pick by the Montreal Canadiens in the 2023 NHL Entry Draft, David Reinbacher. Because when it comes to his season so far, there are just so many bad things that have come along, and it's getting even worse by the day. Now, I'll be honest, I'm recording this audio on the night of Thursday, January 25th, so maybe any extra new conversations that happen on Friday or Sunday, we're not going to get to in this video. I am pre-recording stuff because I'm going on a trip. But when it comes to David Reinbacher's season in 23-24 with EHC Kloten in the Swiss League, sure, you can look at the numbers and say, wait a minute, the guy had 22 points in 46 games played last year. This year, he's at only 8 points in 23 games played. He's on pace for 13 points in 35 games and a -6. What the hell is going on with this guy? Why has he declined? Oh man, that Matvei Michkov pick is looking really good now, isn't it? And this is kind of the thing with David Reinbacher that we have talked about over the past few videos. EHC Kloten sucks. They are so bad this year. And if you go over to the Swiss League standings of what's going on with this team, EHC Kloten is literally second last in the entire Swiss League with, what's the point metric on that? 40 points in 40 games played. They have themselves 135 goals against and 86 goals for in 40 total games. This team is terribly bad. And no matter how good David Reinbacher is as a prospect, there's no 18-year-old guy that can carry a team that's so inferior to everybody else like Kloten is this season and bring him up to actually being contender status and getting some points in the process. David Reinbacher is doing the best he can, and it's just gotten even worse because the announcement a few days ago was that head coach Larry Mitchell will be fired by the team on Monday. And when have you ever seen a hockey team do something like this? Like, sure, in the NHL, we're familiar with the times that a player is going to get traded or when a coach is going to get fired. We know when these things are going to happen. We have a general feel that we can predict. We can smell it, where there's smoke, there's fire. We get smoke. This is a flamethrower being pushed right up in their face because the news outlets are saying, yep, he's getting fired on Monday. We even know when he's going to lose his job. Today, he's still the coach. Tomorrow, he's still the coach. But on Monday, nope, sorry. Sayonara, buddy. And when it comes to David Reinbacher in particular being a part of this situation, the top comment goes out there and says that same thing. One of the few times this team does not rush a prospect and this disaster happens. Shaking my head. The reply says that we rushed Kotkaniemi because we saw his team in Finland was going to be a dumpster fire with his dad coaching. Kind of a lose-lose situation. Now, when it comes to why exactly this procedure is going the way it is, there is a comment that goes out there and tries to explain it. NTBT fan goes out there and says, yeah, it's kind of weird. I get there's got to be some sort of transition, but usually you would be prepared to have your assistant step up for a bit, or better yet, have someone in line already. I assume there is some logic to it. It just sounds funny to me. In my mind, when someone tells you you'll be fired, you're basically fired at that point, and not some point in the future. I think the actual situation was that he was acting as head coach after he fired the last guy, and now he found a coach. I believe he's the GM. And so this adds another element to it. It's not even just the coach of EHC Kloten being fired. This is going to be the third one that they're going to hire. Or at least the third guy to be a part of that bench boss role. So for David Reinbacher going through all these coaches in one season for a terrible team, you have to really feel for the guy at this point, right? There's a comment here from Shogun that I think is really funny. Arpon Basu should have smuggled him back here. And at this point, yeah, you have to start thinking about how David Reinbacher's choice to go back over to Switzerland and the Canadiens' choice to allow him to do that is affecting his development. You gotta remember, part of the reason Reinbacher didn't stay in North America, not to piss on Laval or anything, but part of the reason he decided to leave was to get away from some of the noise. We had reports floating around saying that because there was so much backlash that the Montreal Canadiens took Reinbacher over Michkov, that some Canadiens fans took it to the worst lengths possible by DMing the guy on Instagram and commenting on his posts and saying all these bad, nasty things. Oh, Michkov's better, you're a bust, whatever, ranked outside the top 10, but you went 5th overall type stuff. And this is a day and age where we live in that is very social media dependent. Now, you could debate whether or not that's right or wrong, but that's just the state of how it is. And for David Reinbacher, a guy who was born in the year 2004, he's 19 years old, he's grown up with this stuff all his life, and he's probably an avid user of it, as most 19-year-olds are. To see just the entire online world going out there and bashing you endlessly, while it may seem like a pretty asinine and shallow reason to say, oh yeah, I'm not gonna play in Laval, let's just go back over to Switzerland, we'll play another season there, we'll end off the year, and then we'll come over. We'll let the heat from this Matvei Michkov snubbing die down a little bit before we actually make the rounds in North America. And to his credit, I'll say that David Reinbacher going back to Switzerland wasn't the worst move in the world, but I will say that if he did play a season in the AHL this year, he actually probably would have gotten a lot better development. And I know the rebuttal to that would have been, yeah, but the Canadiens' blue line has so many defensemen on their team, and the Laval Rocket blue line have so many guys too. If you just added Reinbacher, that makes an entire other set of problems in North America. But here's the thing. David Reinbacher would probably be given more developmental time in the AHL than a lot of the other guys that just don't have the potential that Reinbacher has. At the end of the day, the AHL has the luxury of being a quote-unquote developmental league. While it is true that you want to go out there and win hockey games, your number one priority there in the Laval system is to develop guys. And for David Reinbacher, being a part of a Laval Rocket spot that's trying to get into the playoff race, that had a few boosts here and there from guys like Arber Xhekaj and Logan Mailloux playing together, David Reinbacher already surrounding himself with some of his future teammates, that would have been the best case scenario, I feel. Not that it wouldn't have been appropriate for him to go back to Switzerland, but just seeing how everything's gone down now, it's very difficult to feel like that would have been the best decision possible, considering where all these other teams and prospects ended up going. So for David Reinbacher, I feel like this season could be seen as just a lull, not really something to take seriously, and sure, you'll get the articles, you'll get the reports coming out later in the year where you say, oh yeah, David Reinbacher was taken too high. Look, he declined from last year to this year. You'll have the pundits going out there just looking at the numbers. You'll have the people going out there just looking at the stats. And they'll conclude things and they'll write articles and say, yeah, 2023 redraft, David Reinbacher goes from 5th overall to 15th overall. Maybe he's not even in the top 20 or 30 because his decline from last year to this year was so drastic. But with context involved, you'll still see that there is a good player here. He's a shutdown defenseman, good instincts, right-handed player, smooth skating, more outsider light type of player, and there is value to have there. Now, whether or not you'd say that his right-handed defensive quality is the only reason he got drafted as high as he did, hey, that's another conversation. We already called Kent Hughes out on that for pretty much insinuating that if Reinbacher wasn't a right-handed defenseman, they wouldn't have valued him as highly and thus drafted for need at the 5th overall spot. Hey, we'll let bygones be bygones for now. We've got an entire decade and a half to go out there and continually debate about the Reinbacher pick over Michkov and his entire season. But for now, this 23-24 looks to be just an absolute shot in the foot for whatever development you could have had. The fact is, he's 19, so there still is room for him to grow and do more things later. But for now, this season's a write-off, and it just got worse. And this could have been avoided if the Montreal Canadiens just decided to rush him into North America. Is that not ironic? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below about David Reinbacher and his season so far. I hope you enjoyed this research roll 9. And Bye.